Good day. This is Ravit Rose, founder of iRuse. I'm also a divorce scientist, and I'm so pleased to be here with Karen Sparks, who's here to talk to us about some financial situations. If you are a woman married to a C-suite executive, and you know that there's, many different factors and assets, all over the place. What do you do from that point on? So Karen is here to provide you with guidance and direction as to next steps. And then after that, I'm going to explain to you how you could reach out to Karen directly. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Ravi, for having me on. This is a topic that is very much a hot button topic, believe it or not. It's different than the topic that might have been presented if it was presented in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and even sometimes into the early 70s. This is a much different conversation now. Why? Because the nature of business has changed. If you've been involved in a marriage with a partner who has ascended the ranks, or even started their own concern from scratch, and now it is worth a lot. If you're married to someone who's been in multiple business ventures, some of which you don't even know what they do, okay, this conversation is for you, right? In understanding how you get your mind wrapped around it. This has probably established a lifestyle that has allowed you to take your foot off the accelerator and the brake, okay, alternatively, right? Because finances were available or they were made available. Or in some cases, it sounds really archaic to say it, but some of you may be on some sort of allowance situation. That's not what it's being called. But I mean, that's how, you're receiving your finances on a regular basis, right? And so what you need to understand is now that divorce or separation is in your conversation. It hasn't been there. It's there now. Now you're scared and you're overwhelmed because you feel you're outnumbered. You're outnumbered, no pun intended, but you're outnumbered, okay? Because you don't know what's happening. So let me tell you a few things about that and tell you how those things can flow into other things. So let's talk about that executive. We'll use the term executive because there's a lot of other things that can be used in this space, but executive is sort of common and we can all understand it. If you are married to an executive, understand they have several streams of income, several streams. They range from salary to equity compensation. Deferred compensation is something a lot of people may have not heard the word or heard the word, not really understood what it meant. But that is a vehicle that allows high earning people to defer income for tax purposes. So it's sitting over there in a whole different account, right? Is this something you know? No. And so forth. For our startup communities, if you're in a part of the country where this is hot and heavy, right? There are ways that they have dealt with level A, B, and C funding. Okay. There are contracts that they have signed that affect how that compensation is going to be paid out. I dealt with a case 2, 3 years ago where there was a contract provision for divorce in there. And what would happen to those shares if they were paid out, right? If you've never even seen that contract, you don't know. Now, they were in a divorce, which is essentially why I saw that documentation as a divorce finance analyst. But I'm just telling you, there's a lot of stuff you don't know. So, what is a good way for you to get your hands on it, particularly since you're not running that show? And I'd like to say, and I want to give our women a nod who have taken that executive position. So if you're that woman, I want you to listen to this too, right? Because it goes either way, but it is more likely the other way, where as females, we're just not nuanced and we're not financed with it. So what is it that you need to do now? Wow, you're like, whoo, I don't even know what he does. All right. Well, the first thing that you're going to want to do is check in with a professional like myself. So here's your checklist. I will run through, depending on what you're telling me, how long he's been doing it, all the facts that hopefully you're able to supply me with. I can then begin to develop the blueprint on what we need to be looking for. What kinds of income do we need to be looking for? What types of documentation do we need to be looking for? How long is that level funding? If you're involved in somebody with a startup, okay, there's a sunset to the funding levels that they have to meet, with venture capitalists, right? How much does a venture capitalist have? How much of a bite does it have in your partner's business? Okay. I'll begin to identify for you based on what you tell me some of the things that we need to know. Now, I will mention the dreaded word attorney, but in this particular circumstance, I will then be outlining for you what needs to be subpoenaed. Subpoena is a legal word that means it's a document that mandates a company, a business, an individual to provide documentation for certain periods of time and certain types of documentation. In this type of situation, I'm just going to say, and I don't know, Ravi, whether I can say this, but I'm just going to say that you don't have this. It's not sitting in a file cabinet. It may be randomly, on the cloud somewhere. There may be something sitting around, but I'm going to tell you all of the background stuff that goes on that I have seen in about 3 or 4 cases that I'm thinking about right now as I'm having conversation with you and Ravi, is that you don't. So we need to develop that list, right? And we're going to probably need enforcement of that list. It's so sad to say, but my first line of defense is to be collaborative and to be conversational, particularly with the other side when I'm brought into a case. I want to make sure that we can handle this as adults, right? Nicely as adults. But if we cannot play well, if there's stonewalling, if there's, the general playbook of things, then you're going to need that subpoena, right? You're going to need to get into it. Ravita, it's a lot more intense than a lot of people think. I'm telling you.
Oh, absolutely. I've worked with many C-suites, whether it's the executive himself, or it's the mother. And I can tell you that it's daunting, it's scary. But what I want to say is that it's not supposed to be scary. It's only scary because you
Right.
just don't know this, and because you are not familiar with the finances. You're not familiar with how companies grow and they're raising rounds and how is the equity split. You may not know it, but it doesn't mean that it's like it's going to be a horrible situation. If
Not
you
at all.
try to figure it out on your own, or you rely on your attorney to give you the answers on financial matters, there you go. There's your answer. Karen's not is giving you the answer. This is specifically something that a financial analyst is supposed to help you with. This is not something that your attorney is going to dive into in detail the way Karen will. The attorneys focus on the law, the global view, and they're
That is
there to
correct.
make sure legally things work. But if you want to know what's there, how is it broken down, how is he being paid, how is he getting this and that, then this is the conversation to have. Now, equally, there are many C-suites that I've worked with who actually want the mother to have access to a financial advisor to understand what they are saying. Because
Right.
if the conversation comes from, let's say, the father, and he goes and tells you as the mother the information, out of emotion, out of ego, out of default, you may say, I don't believe you. I don't believe anything that you're saying to me. But if Karen goes and tell, who is a neutral, financial neutral, she's not here to be on anybody's side. But if she's here to help you and say, this makes sense, this makes sense. If you're not sure about this, ask this question, ask that question. That conversation is going to allow you to have collaboration, which means that you're going to pay less in legal fees at the end of the day. I'm sure you've seen that many times, Karen.
Oh, no, I've definitely seen it. And the reason why this is so important is you are the person that's going to need support. And that's talked about differently in different jurisdictions. You either know it as alimony, spouse support, or maintenance, however it's called, it's all the same thing. You're going to need that. And your ability to be able to have a professional walk alongside you to identify these income sources, because no matter where you live and no matter how it happens, your support is based on the income coming in for the spouse that's making it, if you're not working. And if you don't really know what all these ins and outs are, what's likely to pop in about 6 months. So maybe they're talking to you now because they know in 25 something's about to pop and they need this marriage, to be ended so that they can take advantage of that. These are things that play into your decision making, to Ravit's point, to your knowing what you want to go after and what you don't want to go after. One of the things that's very important early on is to bring the finance professional in to show you where you need to fight. Okay. You don't need to fight on every level. It's not worth it. And sometimes the ROI on that, the return on investment, ROI stands for return on investment, for you in the divorcing position is not there. So establishing your game plan means knowing what's there. And then you can determine what it is that, even if you have a right to it, you may walk from it because there's other assets a little bit more important, or there's another income stream that's going to be a little bit more beneficial to you, depending on how old you are, depending on where you're standing in your life, et cetera, et cetera. You may want to make some different decisions. You may want some stock that's going to pop, okay? Because whatever that company is doing is going to be the next great thing, we'll say. You know, will be that unicorn in the next great thing. So I wanted to add that to what you were saying as well.
Absolutely. When you're making a divorce decision, I want you to think of the 4Ds. When you're making a divorce decision based out of desperation, denial, or despair, you will with 100% certainty come back and regret it. Always. It happens to everybody. So if you're going into this with a very emotional stance, and you're not thinking logically long-term, as Karen is saying, and you're not thinking about like all the other opportunities that you could have financially in the future, and you decide to, let's say, fight it all out and go to the lawyers and you drain yourselves financially, some of those incomes may disappear, because it happens so that there's a lot of clauses that may say that if there's problems here and problems there and that, then there goes your support, there goes your maintenance, there goes. So please don't be overreactive. I know it's hard. I know it's very scary, but that's what Karen is here to do with you. So if you resonate with this message, if this is a conversation that you've been having in your mind, if this is something that you want to learn more about, please do reach out to Karen. And I'm sure that you're going to have some wonderful information, advice, direction, support by her. You could reach her in any of the ways below. You can email her, you can call her, you can check her website. Anything and everything is available to you. Thank you so much, Karen, for being here with us. Thank you for this very insightful educational information. It's very important. Until the next time we speak, I wish you all a day that matters. Take care.